Hey everybody, Reed Price here. I play the role of Rob Shandon on Sullivan's Crossing, and you're listening to Corman Productions' Deep Dive TV Podcast with Dave and Stacie.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions. My co-host Stacie here to talk about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 2, Episode 9, titled Remorse. And actually, in my notes, I have title 98, which this is definitely not the 98th episode of the season. So
nowhere near. Not going to see those numbers again, ever, I don't think.
No, I don't believe so. Alright, so the episode description reads as follows. Season finale, part 1. Maggie enlists Cal's help after Sully decides he must take drastic measures to set things right with Lola. Sydney returns from New York, hoping to reconnect with a still heartbroken Rafe. Frank and Edna try to make amends, and Sully makes a judgment call that will cost him dearly. The episode was written by John Galligan and directed by Shaheem Sharif. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend go and check it out, and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on the platforms of this podcast is now available on, please follow. And feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on our YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. Alright, shout-outs this week. Skylar Anderson. He has never called the hands on the clock handles, so that apparently is not a Canadian thing. That is just a Maggie
weird
thing
that happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, he's quite confident that he's seen scenes that we have not, but of course he can't exactly pinpoint them. And asking him to do that is
And we definitely have another one this episode.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Sharon Greenman, she writes, well, as usual, we agree on almost everything. Although I can't drum up any sympathy for Walter. It was actually worse than I thought it was going to be. I do have a disagreement about Lola's age. I'm pretty sure she and Maggie are the same age, around 30, which actually this episode kind of supports.
Yeah, we got an answer this episode about numbers, which surprised me.
In the Season 1 finale, they sure look to be the same. Maggie said she came back when she was 15 to find Lola in her room. Roy told Cal that Lola's mother died when she was 16, so I wonder if Lola will take Sedona's advice and go back to the site. Yep, that seems to be what she did. By the way, Cal's other sister, Sierra, and his brother is Dakota in the books.
All right.
Which we, of course, have not read. I do have a comment about this not drumming up sympathy for Walter. I don't think we actually disagree there. It's not that I have more sympathy for Walter in as so much as I have more understanding of where he's coming from. It's not exactly the places that I thought that he was coming from, but it doesn't make him better. It just makes him kind of a different kind of shitty when it comes down to it. So he's not necessarily better, but I have more of an understanding of where he's coming from, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
All right, so Stacie, your thoughts in this week's episode.
Okay, so I'm a little confused why they're calling it the first part of a season finale, honestly. It didn't feel like it had, like, this is a two-parter feel to it. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like, it's the penultimate episode.
Right.
So that's a little weird. Okay, so this is the episode, like, everybody makes up. It's a feel-good episode for the most part.
Yeah.
We've got some not-so-fun stuff for Sydney. But for the most part, everybody makes up. We make nice. We're just, everybody is kind of the calm before the storm, I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. Before, things hit the fan next week.
All right. So, while I enjoy most of this episode, and I do love the series, I do love the characters, I do not always love how they handle their plots and stories. A prime example of that would be the one in this episode with the conclusion of the whole Sully hit Lola thing.
Yeah.
I think it was Sharon who said that...
somebody spoiled us on that.
I don't know.
They didn't word it like a spoiler, though.
Yeah.
They said, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And we were like, well, no, they showed us that already.
And it's like... And my point then was you can't do that because you can't spend an entire season on this plot and then be like, whoops, never mind.
Right.
No, that part of it does not work for me.
I'm just kind of glad it's over.
I'm with you
because we've all along been like, where are we going with this? Can we be done with it? Right. And I think we're done with it now.
I'm glad that we're done with it, but it definitely doesn't justify the amount of time that we spent on it, for sure.
It doesn't, no. And to that point, like, why do we trust her memory?
Right.
That she just randomly got back. A random vision of a random car driving by when she was a child and in trauma over his memory.
So next season, it's going to be discovered that, whoops, Sully actually was responsible for hurting Lola. Yeah, I hope not. Let's just be done with this, and I don't want to ever talk about it again.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I did generally enjoy this episode, except for that.
Okay.
Like, yeah. So, yeah, do we have anything else to say before diving in?
Let's look at our cast. This week we had no Walter, no Andrew.
Oh, what a crying shame on that one.
No Finn. We have a credit for Jackson. And a scene, apparently, that the CW cut. Because there are photos of Jackson and Connie having a conversation in the press photos from CTV.
See, I didn't even see those photos, but I knew that Jackson was supposed to be in this episode. And I can't believe that they cut that scene.
I know. We have not seen Jackson since episode 201.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't even really explained where the heck he's been. Because he hasn't started school yet.
Mm.
I kind of thought maybe they're telling us he actually left for college without actually saying it. But then in this episode, we hear he's leaving for school soon.
Right.
Which means he should have been here for the last 8 episodes.
Right.
Because he was literally working at the crossing last we knew.
Right.
He just never went back to work after his accident, I guess.
Yeah, so
Which I can see, but that should have been, like, in dialogue somewhere.
Right. So the CW has very clearly been using a chainsaw to edit their shows rather than a scalpel.
Right. They're cutting out literal scenes with all of the side characters, which is probably the reason that we have such trouble with these stories.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're not getting them the way that they were presented to the Canadian audience.
Which makes it kind of tough to evaluate this series, really, when it comes down to it, because we're not seeing the complete picture.
Right. So Jackson, of course, is played by T. Thomason.
I was looking forward to seeing him again.
I was definitely looking forward to seeing him. We got a photograph of him.
We did
in this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, according to the press photos, there was a whole scene that was cut.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as guest appearances, we've got Jane back. That's Rob's love interest, played by Cindy Sampson. Sedona, we had said she was in the credits, right? And we were confused by that because she left. Well, she is in the credits. But she only appears in flashbacks from the previous 2 episodes.
So you think that's why she was credited, or is there perhaps a deleted scene as well there?
If there is, it had to be like a phone call, right? I don't think she came back.
Yeah.
There could have been.
Yeah.
Or they just gave her credits because they're reusing her footage.
Yeah, okay.
And it, it's based on contracts or whatever. But
yeah.
But that's what we got of her, anyways.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, Glenn Perry comes back, played by Dean Armstrong.
Yeah, and Sharon was right about that one. He apparently is a scuzz bucket.
I mean, yeah, we were pretty sure that was going to be the case.
Right, of course.
Yeah, and there's no one-off appearances this episode.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, so the episode begins with Sully trying to call Lola, but she hits the FU button. Maggie says good morning to Sully and notices that he's upset. She asks him if he wants to talk about it, but he says he's going to call Frank for a walk instead. And then we have our credits. Frank gets a call from Sully for the walk. Edna seems annoyed, as she's been all season long.
Just the last 3 or 4 episodes.
I mean, most of the season she's been annoyed with Frank, and I don't really blame her. But and asks how he can be so patient with Sully but not give his cousin a chance. In response, Frank just kind of chuckles.
Okay, so a couple things I have about this. First of all, Sully's calling while they're at the outpost and saying he wants Frank to come talk to him, and Edna's getting upset. I want to point out the fact that Sully's literally their boss, and they're on the clock right now.
Right.
He's paying them right now. So if he wants Frank to go do something else, that's his prerogative.
Yeah.
Because he's literally on the clock, and it's his boss saying, hey, leave the outpost and come here and see me. So I don't get why, Edna has what she's upset about in this moment. That he's being pulled away from the outpost.
I think it's just a general problem, and not necessarily a problem with this.
So the other thing I have is about the whole, he's chuckled. We're going to learn later why he's amused by her commenting about the cousin. Because he has already resolved that, she just doesn't know it yet. And this didn't happen, but I feel like it would have made more sense for Edna to be upset about the fact that he kept that secret from her. Like the fact that already happened. Because it had to have been days ago for this stuff to have been mailed here. Because remember, they lived where Alberta, that's a ways away. So it's not like he just went next door and picked the stuff up. It's this happened already.
Well, I think I think Frank is waiting to make this a big surprise.
He's waiting to make it a big surprise, but the fact that she's mad at him about it still.
Right.
And he's just chuckling. And it's another thing that he's kept from her for days, at least.
I have more to say about that as we go, for sure. When we get there, I think I'll discuss that more. But Maggie goes for a run.
Her usual.
Yep.
She's got to take a run every episode.
Mm-hmm. Sully tells Frank about what he told Lola, that she did not react well, that she basically told him that she never wanted to see him again. And she's probably never going to trust him again. I would imagine not.
But what did he think was going to happen?
Right. Frank asks if Maggie was told, and of course not. She just found out about Walter and wonders how she'll react to learning he lied to her too. And Frank says, well, you never know until you do it. Frank says making amends is about taking accountability, not about asking for forgiveness. Sully says he knows that, but he wishes there was something he could do. Lola, meanwhile, has breakfast and hears a ringing in her ears, and then has a flash of the accident. All right, this would have made more sense if we had been seeing this prior to this.
Yeah, throughout this whole episode, every time she cooks, she has a memory.
Right.
So, obviously, something to do with cooking.
Right.
Is what's sparking her memory.
I mean, if she was having some kind of PTSD problem, then we should have seen it by now.
I mean, it's been 25 years,
right.
We've learned in this episode, which is a lot longer than we thought it was.
Yes.
Yeah, why are you getting random bits of memory today?
Right. It's convenient timing for sure. So Cal visits Maggie, and she's wondering how Sedona is doing. She sits with him and eats breakfast. Cal asks if he's getting, if she'll be getting back home soon. He says Andrew will be glad to have her back. Maggie tells him that did not work out so well. And apparently this is news to Cal. I figured she would have heard this from Sully or someone by now.
Yeah, we only talk to each other when it's convenient now.
She asks what his plans are, and he's going to volunteer with Search and Rescue, which you called
Finally!
that. Yep. Till he can find something more full-time. And apparently there's going to be a full-time position potentially opening up in Search and Rescue.
Well, again, I'm still very confused by that whole dynamic. You
Right.
got the Search and Rescue, which is volunteer, you got the fire department, you got the EMT, and they're all the same person.
Right.
So what?
So Connie can't leave, because if she does, the entire thing is just going to collapse. And
I mean, right.
there's going to be no hospital, no Search and Rescue, no EMTs, and it's already in dire state. So she asks, So she ends, Rob is making some place settings. Jane stops by and says that he heard he was short-handed, probably because Clover is useless.
I mean, he's always been short-staffed.
Right, yeah.
This is probably just an excuse of her to come hang out with him. But yeah, she offers to help, and you know what? She's a keeper.
I agree.
She doesn't even work here, and she's already doing more than Clover, your assistant manager.
Right, yeah. Jane says that she had a tough time in her divorce. The one thing that helped was talking about how she felt. And she says if he wants to talk about Sarah, she is willing to listen. And Rob is surprised by this, being like that wouldn't bother you. And she says, why would it? And this seems to impress Rob.
Yes, he has you almost said the wrong name.
Yes, I did.
He had a very pleasant smile on his face.
Yes.
Leaving this conversation.
Maggie gets a call from Phoebe. She wants to talk about daycare.
So yeah, she's back in Boston, and I think the Boston air has made her Phoebe again.
Yeah, that was my exact thought. Okay, so she's pressuring her about daycare. Maggie says, please change the subject. So she changes it to fucking Walter. Phoebe.
She says, we got a waiting list for daycare, and we have to hire a nanny. She's got at least 6 months before this baby's born.
Right.
It's a little early to hire someone. No, someone's going to not wait 6 months to take the job. That's not how hiring works.
Right. And then, so she asked to change the subject, so she decides to change it to an even more sore subject.
Yeah, and basically is trying to, convince Maggie to, be cool with Walter.
Oh, Maggie, I'm sorry. Phoebe, I was starting to like you, but...
It's that Boston air.
I guess so. Maybe she's just not good on the phone.
Gotta keep these people out of Boston. Mm-hmm. Because when they're at the crossing, they're pleasant.
Not Andrew.
Well...
Andrew's not good anywhere.
He's Andrew.
Yeah.
And she also tells him that Walter's going to get to keep his license in order to pay restitution.
Goody.
I mean, that means they're still going to have money.
Yeah, that is
so
good
that
news.
Could be helpful next week.
Yeah, perhaps.
The fact that maybe money is available again. That could come back into the story.
So Cal visits Connie to apply for Search and Rescue. She's happy with the news. Connie envies him being able to switch things up like he's doing. And Cal suggests, why can't you? Her divorce is final. Jackson's out at the college, who of course we're not going to be able to see, even though we should. And so what's holding her back? And you know what's funny to me? Is that Chad Michael Murray has chemistry with everybody.
He's a good actor.
Yeah. Like, he comes in and has chemistry with whoever he's interacting with, even if he's never been in a scene with them before.
Yeah.
Like, I think we could do a scene together and we would have chemistry. Actually, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Anyway.
So one thing that happened in this conversation is she says, we just need to do a background check and then we can start training. I kind of feel like that might be foreshadowing that something's going to come up in his background check.
I mean, why would it?
I don't know, but it felt like one of those sentences that didn't need to be there.
Right.
If it wasn't going to be something.
Right.
Like, why would you talk about a background check for a volunteer position?
So he's secretly a master criminal mind? Or...
I don't know. Like, maybe there's going to be something we don't know that pops in.
Maybe he is the one who hit Lola back in the day. So Sully arrives home and decides to break the news to Maggie that she deserves to know the truth about why he didn't go after her. Maggie takes the news better than expected. She doesn't agree with what he did, but she doesn't hate him. She was desperate to get back to him that day, too, and she offers to go check on Lola.
Yeah, because he just wants to know that Lola's okay, but she's not taking his calls, so she's like, well, I'll go check on her. Which is a big concession for Maggie, because we know that Maggie and Lola do not get along.
It's really interesting to me that she takes this news as well as she does, because I'm not sure that I would if I were in her position.
You know, I think she doesn't have any more negativity to give at this point.
Gotcha.
Like, she's over Walter. Mm-hmm. She had this whole falling out with Andrew. She's already made up with her dad for their own things.
Right.
So I think at this point she's like, I don't care about anything going on with Lola.
Right.
Like, yeah, that sucks, but it's not my problem. Maybe. It's kind of like...
maybe.
Like, maybe she just doesn't have the energy to care about it as much as he was worried she would.
Gotcha. So, Frank and Edna... Frank decides it's time to tell his wife about Sully. Maggie stops by to talk to Lola, quickly deduces why she's there, and this conversation doesn't go very well. She accuses her of never wanting to be a part of Sully's life, and Maggie starts to deny it, and Lola ends up basically saying that she just wants to be left alone.
Yeah, the conversation doesn't go great.
No, I wouldn't expect it to. Frank tells Edna the news. He's known since the hurricane, but he promised to tell Edna until wait to tell Edna until after he talked to Lola. All right. So there's a couple of things here.
Okay.
So he says he was trying to do right by Sully. I get that, but he's also failed to do right by his wife at the same time, which is something that she's basically upset about, and what she points out to him.
It's what she's been upset about over and over again, is about people keeping things from her. This alone in a vacuum, I could completely understand it. Like, I can also see why Edna would be upset about that. But this is not a vacuum. This is on the heels of learning that Frank lied to her about the whole cousin situation. Right. You add these things together, and it starts to look like a serious problem within your marriage. I see that, but in this case, I definitely think she's overreacting. Do you? Because it's not his secret to tell. It has nothing to do with either Frank or Edna. I agree with that. I think if the cousin situation didn't exist, she might be a little upset. Which he could have resolved by telling her that he fixed that. Right. Prior to this conversation. Well, that's what I'm saying. He didn't do that, so this looks bad. Like, that he keeps not telling her things. I mean, yeah, I get it. That's what they're really fighting about. But this doesn't feel like it should be the final straw. Again, it's not... I don't think it is the final straw. It almost was. Yeah. It almost was. Right. She's like, I can't do this. Right. But I don't think it's so far gone that they can't come back from that. They just have to have a conversation, like, okay, I'll do better, and then actually do it. I don't think it's, like, totally... She should be mad at Sully, again, for not putting her in the loop. She shouldn't be mad at Frank. I mean, I get why she is, but how shitty would it be if Frank got this secret, and then went and was like, oh, guess what? Look what I learned, after I just promised I wouldn't tell anybody. I mean, Sully basically put Frank in a shitty rock and a hard place situation. Right, but so yeah, it's not their business. Right. It's Frank's business, or it's Sully's business. Right. And Sully was confiding in him, as a sponsor. The reason they had this conversation was during a I'm drinking moment. Like, these are secret conversations that it's not his business to share with anybody.
Right.
And, I mean, maybe he could have pushed a little harder to be like, okay, we need to get this secret out there faster than what we're doing. I mean, he did try.
Yes.
But it hasn't been that long since the hurricane. It's been, what, a week? Maybe two?
That's the other thing, is the timeline.
It's not like he's been keeping the secret for years.
Right. Yeah, no, I get you. All right, so she says she needs to go and get some air. Maggie returns to Sully, who's decided to hand over the info on the crossing because he's going to turn himself in to take responsibility for his actions. Maggie tries to call Frank. Sully doesn't want that, but she asks to at least loop Cal in to get some advice, and Sully agrees to that. Lola, meanwhile, is chopping food.
Again, cooking when this happens.
Yes, hears a ringing, has a flash, and remembers Sedona's words about being back to the accident to help her remember.
And she instantly goes and grabs her coat.
Right.
She's like, forget cooking. We're going to go back to the site right now, even though we haven't been there in 25 years, and it's probably right down the street since I rode my bike there, and I should have been in this spot every day in the last 25 years, and I'm going to say I've never been there and go there right this minute.
Now, I would ask her, what exactly is the urgency that you couldn't at least finish cooking your food? And, of course, the urgency that she is not aware of is that Sully is about to turn himself in for the crime. But again, she does not know that.
Right.
So Edna returns from her walk. She's tired of being taken for granted, playing second fiddle to Sully. Frank's response is, I'll pick you up later.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't... That's terrible. Like, you couldn't try to, like...
And I know he doesn't mean it that way, but he's basically coming off as like, okay, cool, I don't care how you feel. Bye.
I think it's more like he's just like... He thinks, well, our relationship is over at this point. Like, okay, I guess you're going to break it off now. I don't know. But so, Cal comes to the Sully residence. There's no statute of limitations on a hit or run, according to him, and it's been over 25 years. We get that officially confirmed.
So we officially learned 25 years. This confirms that Maggie, Lola, and Sydney are all in their mid-30s.
Yes.
Because we know already that Maggie and Sydney are the same age.
Yeah.
And we thought...
Younger?
They were all in their 20s.
Right.
At various stages of their 20s. But apparently they're all like mid-30s if this happened 25 years ago.
Right. Just what was she, like 6 when this happened? No younger than 5.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
And 25, yeah, so they're in their 30s.
Yeah.
And, so Cal said there's no statute of limitations for a hit and run.
Right.
So I had to look all this stuff up again, because I know I did it once before. I was like, I need to look this up. So I've got some more information about that.
Okay.
Okay, so, of course, it depends on location and circumstances. I started by looking in the States this time, because, that's where Cal is from. That's where he was practicing law. So I was like, let me look up. Basically, it's like, what should he know?
Right.
Right? Since he's the one stating this. So in some U.S. states, it looks like the only time there'd be no statute of limitations for a hit and run is if it was manslaughter. As in the victim died because of the hit and run. Well, which is not the case here.
Right.
In most other cases, and again, it varies by state, but they're all look to be 5 years or less in the U.S.
Okay.
And then, this is just based on my quick research, obviously, and I don't have a law degree. But this is Googling.
Right.
I looked up New York specifically because that's where Cal was practicing law. And the statute of limitations for hit and run there is 3 years after the minor turns 18.
Okay.
So we're way past that.
Right.
In Nova Scotia, and this is what I looked up before, but I looked it up again, so, maybe I got it wrong. But I found the same thing. It's 2 years from the victim's 19th birthday.
Yeah, which we are well past.
Well past. There's definitely nothing that says there is no statute of limitations on a hit and run, which is what he said in this scene.
Right.
So my takeaway is either we're supposed to believe Cal's a really shitty lawyer and he doesn't know what he's talking about, or the writers just didn't bother to look this up at all.
Right.
When they came up with this plot line, which is like a major plot line for the whole season.
Right. I'm probably going with the latter and not the former, but,
they live in a stricter world than we do, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Now, he does say Sully could be brought up on charges of failure to report, criminal negligence, and impaired driving causing bodily harm.
Yeah.
I tried looking those charges up specifically. I got really confusing information on the time limits. But we kept coming back to something about a 15-year period in Canada, which is like the maximum. It's some kind of law in Canada that's the maximum statute for most offenses.
Right.
And the only things that aren't covered under that are things that are on a specific list, which included murder and kidnapping and drug trafficking, like the big things that don't have any limits.
Right.
There was this 15-year maximum law.
Which still we're well beyond.
We're still well beyond that.
Right.
Exactly. That's my point. So even though I didn't find specific numbers for these specific charges, it doesn't matter, because unless they're those big things, which we're not talking that, 15 years should have been the highest number involved.
So this might make sense if Lola were in fact dead, but she is not.
She's not.
All right, so Sully says that Cal, he can't imagine what Cal must think of him. Cal says that what matters is he's doing the right thing now. Lola, meanwhile, goes to the site of the accident. Maggie calls Lola and leaves a voice message to let her know of Sully's intentions. I'm thinking he's also hoping that maybe she'll call Sully and tell him not to do this.
Right.
Lola starts to get her memories back and realizes Sully wasn't the one that hit her.
Yeah, she has this vision of this brown car kind of fleeing the scene. And she's like, Sully, it wasn't you.
Yes.
Now, here's my other thought. Does the fact that it wasn't him actually make it any better for her? I mean, it does.
From a legal standpoint? From a moral standpoint?
For Lola
Yeah.
being like, I hate you and I never want to see you again. And
Right.
now suddenly she's going to be like, oh my God, you didn't do it. Does it really matter that he didn't do it? He thought he did it.
Right.
And he hid it from you for 25 years.
Yes.
I mean, that was the issue, right?
Yes.
Not the fact that he accidentally hit you, but the way he handled it
Right.
is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he didn't actually do it, does that make any difference in, like, how they're... You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, and I think I basically agree with you. I don't... I don't think this actually resolves the basic problem that she actually had.
But it does for her, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
Because maybe she's... I don't know. She's Lola.
Yes.
She's a little blonde, I think.
Yeah. So in the car, Maggie cries about not wanting to lose Sully, begs him not to do it, but Sully has to do this for Lola and himself. Lola drives up, saying she remembers that it was another car and that Sully had nothing to do with it, and that's the end of that plot.
Moments before him going in, and, they
Right.
were going to throw the book on him, apparently.
Yes.
Whether she said something or not, I guess, is what we're stopping from happening.
Well, what Cal said was she would have to press charges. It depends on whether Lola pressed charges or not.
Right. But they're making it seem like if she
Yeah.
didn't get here in that moment, it was going to be too late because he's going to go throw himself to the fishes.
And, he was just going to be instantly in prison for the rest of his life.
The other
Like
thing
I said, this entire thing is not handled well at all.
The other problem I have with this scene is the way she just comes, like, speeding up here. Okay, so now she's driving recklessly to get this information to them.
Right. And then she hit a child probably along the way.
I know it would be less drama, but wouldn't it have made a lot more sense if she had just called Maggie back after she got that message?
Right.
Instead of driving to the police station to tell them?
And also, I mean, I guess she knew that they were going to come here because of Maggie's
Because of the voicemail. So she heard the message and then drove here in a panic trying to stop them. But, like, you could have just called.
Right.
It would have been quicker.
Yep, it would have been. Less dramatic, as you said. So we're going to find out in the next season that Lola actually hit and run someone herself, and that's going to be like the season-long arc. And then it was actually not her at all. Anyway, moving along. I'm glad we're just done with this plotline. Sydney returns. She felt like she doesn't fit into that world anymore, the modeling world in New York. She needed to confront David, and that's why she really went there in the first place. And she's ready to move forward with Rafe. And Rob is all, oh, well, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, and instantly, I saw the foreshadowing that this isn't going to go well.
No. I didn't think it would. So Connie looks at a picture of Jackson on her desk. We, of course, don't get to actually see him. Not sure about that at all. And calls about a position that she might want to apply for.
Yeah, she leaves a message with a friend about a position in Otter Lake, asking if it's still available. And I looked up Otter Lake. It's a real place. It is in the Halifax region of Nova Scotia, so it's probably not all that far from where Timberlake is supposed to be.
Right.
So we're not talking a life move, just a career one.
Yeah.
So it may be a compromise between what she was talking to Cal about and just sitting still.
Gotcha.
The other thing from this scene is she was looking at Cal's application for the search and rescue. So I got a couple of things from that application. First of all is that he lists a phone number, with a Nova Scotia phone number, which I found a little strange. I would have expected him to still have a New York number.
Gotcha.
And then his mailing address indicates that he's at box number 1 in Timberlake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird that no one has ever signed up for mail before him at this post office.
Right. Yeah, nope.
Box number 1 goes right to Cal.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Good to know. So I can mail him something? I should mail him a Corn Productions t-shirt.
Ooh.
Yeah. All right. So where was I? Okay. Maggie sits with Sully, who's confused, and she suggests that alcohol and the shock of finding Lola might have screwed with his memories. This much?
I mean,
if you say so.
One of them is wrong.
Right. Yeah. Cal tells them that they can find out who was responsible by looking at speeding tickets in the area.
Yeah, but are they actually going to do that after 25 years?
Right. I don't believe so. I mean, who knows if this person is even still alive?
Why do you care so much? It's been 25 years.
Right.
Move on with your life. You're fine now.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. It would have made more sense if we had seen some kind of evidence of a problem that Lola was having, like some kind of mental health issue or a physical problem. None of that has been evident. I mean, we saw it a little bit in this episode, but before that, not so much.
Yeah, it was just her saying, oh, this has always bothered me because we never found who it was.
Right. Cal tells them that they can find out who... Oh, yeah, I already said that. So Zoe goes to lay down. Cal and Maggie share a moment, and she says she's going to miss him. Where is she going exactly?
Well, she's going back to Boston.
But where, how, why?
She's going home.
Okay, to where? The house?
To Boston.
Does she have a residence in Boston still?
I mean, she had an apartment.
Okay.
She probably still has it. I don't think she moved her stuff out. She was just coming here for like a trip, right? And got tangled up. But yeah, she's planning on going home. Like, remember earlier, said she was going to go look for jobs.
Right. Yeah.
So she didn't take that job, but she's going to look for a different job in Boston. And remember, Phoebe's trying to get a nanny set up for her. So.
Right. Lola calls Maggie to apologize, and she wants to talk about something and would rather do it in person. So Maggie agrees to come over.
Yeah, I was really confused what that could be when I first saw this scene. I had completely forgotten about the thing that it ends up being.
Right. Maybe it's she hit Maggie when she was a little kid, and then, she did a hit and run. But anyway, moving along. Dumb joke. Anyway, Lola calls Maggie... I already just said
Sydney,
that. Sydney goes to Rafe. He's not horribly overjoyed to see her. He asks if something happened in New York, and she sidesteps the question. All right, that's immediately the evidence for me that Rafe is actually right in the scene. She's not ready. Because if she were, maybe she would have explained exactly what went down and the reasons why she felt the need to go back there in the first place.
Right.
Because Rafe does not have that information. She says she's ready to do this thing with him. Rafe doesn't buy it. And this does not go well, and she ends up leaving very upset.
Yeah.
So,
doesn't go well at all.
Nope. Edna and Frank return. He brings her a box. And he says that she was right. That he hasn't been fair to her in regards to Sully. And in the box is his mother's regalia. How? He called his cousin who got the regalia back. But she was right about that too. And he says there's never been anybody else for him and never will be. And it's funny because Sully should probably be giving this dude a call to at least let him know that what Lola actually remembered and how this all resolved.
Well, I don't think Frank ever even heard that they were going to the station.
Right.
Because Sully wouldn't let Maggie call him.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean...
So he was literally going to, go get arrested without even saying anything to Frank and Edna.
And not a word to the person whose marriage he's basically helping to blow up at this point. So, kind of shitty on Sully's part there. Lola and Maggie...
So yeah, Frank and Edna finally made up. I have a side note here. Is this the first time we're seeing where Frank and Edna live?
I think it is.
Because I envision them living in, one of the cabins. Maybe a really nice one.
Yeah.
But, more on the property.
Mm-hmm.
How Cal is living.
Right.
But this is, a full 2-story house, just like Sully's.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait, this is their house. Maybe we have seen it before, but I didn't realize that's where they were.
I don't recall seeing it.
But I was, thrown off by this fact that they just have, this whole house to themselves.
I wouldn't actually be surprised if it's the same set as Sully's house.
I mean, it might be.
Yeah.
And it's probably on Sully's property.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, it's like a house.
Right,
Big house.
Yep. Lola and Maggie, she confesses about the letter. She took it because she thought she might decide to stay, and she would potentially lose Sully.
Yeah, which is funny
it's
because...
interesting because it kind of recontextualizes what we thought she was doing.
Right, we knew she was jealous, but we thought she was jealous about Cal. And she might have been.
Yeah.
But she's saying here that she was just jealous about Sully.
Right.
And they admit that they are both been jealous of each other.
Well, it's funny because, Maggie forgives her and Lola's surprised by this, but she just forgave her dad for, doing a hit and run and not saying anything about it for 25 years. So I think she can forgive her for this little thing.
And Lola was also really surprised to hear Maggie say she's jealous of her. Like, Lola didn't get that. She's never understood that, apparently.
Right, yes.
So yeah, we had some communication here.
Yes.
And some breakthroughs.
Right, and I feel like we did this at the end of last season where they got to a better place, and then it just kind of disintegrated.
Lola and Maggie?
Yeah.
I mean, things were pretty bad for them at the beginning of this season when,
yes, at the
Sydney
beginning of
was,
this season.
Maggie wasn't calling Lola about the hospital stuff.
Right. At the beginning of the season, yes, but it seemed like they had patched things up in the previous season. I seem to have some memory of that.
I don't recall.
Yeah, but anyway, she ends up opening the letter from Cal and reading it.
And it really wasn't anything different than the last time we heard the letter.
No.
The last time we heard the letter, which was when Lola was reading it, we were just kind of wondering if that wasn't the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like that was the whole thing. And I don't know. I don't get from this letter that he was actually explaining anything to her.
No.
And he didn't say, like, hey, I'll be back.
Right.
So I don't see how the absence of this letter actually made things worse.
Right.
Like, it's supposed to be a big deal that, like, we kept this letter from her. But the letter doesn't say anything helpful.
Well, maybe we didn't hear the entire letter again.
But she just read it, and she read the same thing.
Gotcha. So Lola tells her that Cal came back to the crossing for her. And then we see Cal sitting in his cabin and remembers his conversation with Sedona in regards to Maggie. And then Maggie invites Lola over for dinner with her and Sully. They all patch things up and hugs. And then Sully gets a phone call from Glenn, who wants to flip the ownership stake 70-30 in Glenn's favor. And this really pisses off Sully, who says, hey, they had a deal. And, of course, Glenn is reneging in this deal. He says, nope, they'll take this to the auction. Sully
he says, I look forward to bidding against you in the auction, which we learn is less than a week away.
Right. Sully tells Maggie and Lola. Maggie asks what they're going to do.
Actually, Lola asked what they're going to do.
Right. Okay.
When I was taking my notes, I put Maggie
Yeah.
From memory, and then it's happened, and I was like, oh, Lola's the one who says that.
Okay.
So I changed my note.
So Sully says they're going to raise the money and win the auction. Sullivan's Crossing is their home, and no one is going to take it without a fight. And that's where the episode ends.
Yeah, and I don't know, shouldn't we have been raising the money weeks ago?
Yeah.
Like 19 episodes ago when we learned there's a financial problem?
Right, yes.
How come we haven't earned any money? Like, I know this season, like, there was this whole, like, we forgot we needed it plot.
Yeah. Right.
We're waiting until a week before the auction to be like, let's raise some money!
Right. Yeah, so that is where the episode ends.
I just find it hilarious that we're finally getting to this plot point that has been evident since, like, the pilot of this series.
Right.
Of us needing to raise money to save the crossing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so any further thoughts about this episode going into the finale?
That is all I've got. I have seen the photos for the finale, and it doesn't look like great things are going to happen.
No.
So I think we're in for some drama next week.
Yes, well, I mean, it is the finale, so you'd expect it.
And I know we're going to have the auction. We're going to get there. And I know that John McNeil makes an appearance at the auction.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
If you don't know, that's the actor who plays the mechanic creature on From.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see him in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that we're going to walk out of the auction with somebody on our team here owning the crossing.
Right.
And not Glenn Perry.
Well, that'd be a crappy end to this series. Like, Glenn Perry now owns this place, and next week he's turning it into a parking lot. But
I'm assuming we're going to find a way out of this.
Right.
And my guess is Phoebe's going to come back into the picture and buy it or something.
Right.
Because she has her husband's money again.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else to say before concluding?
That's all I got.
All right. Next week, we got the finale, and then we are done with season 2 of Sullivan's Crossing.
They're still filming season 3 as far as I know.
Yep. No idea about release date in Canada, never mind in the U.S.
Right. It'll be a while.
Yeah. So hopefully sometime next year.
Well, I would imagine.
Yes. But probably October
I'm guessing
again.
we won't get it until the fall.
Yeah.
Which is when we got season 2, and that's a bummer.
Yes, it is.
It's a bummer. I hate being so far behind.
I know.
And I'm guessing, they're going to get it in the summer, which makes sense because it's a summer show. Although, if we stay in timeline, they're moving into the fall now.
Right.
Unless we time jump to the following summer, but I don't feel like they can do that. I mean, maybe they will.
I mean, they could.
But they can do whatever they want, I guess.
Right, yeah.
But so far, we've only lived in this one summer, but we're heading into fall. Like, we heard 2 weeks ago that school's starting for Finn. So, it's September now.
Right. All right. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this episode? What'd you think of this podcast? Stacie, can be reached at?
I can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there's a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Corn Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Corn Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Corn Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell so you're notified when new content drops. This is Dave and Stacie from Corn Productions signing off.